first claim is it is undeniable that reparations are just and necessary.
All right, reparations, fair, necessary. My question would be, who's going to get it? Why would they get it? And how long are we going to sit here focusing on trying to get reparations? It's been how many years since slavery? 150 years, 1865? Whenever there's a real thing that this country wants to do, they do it. Stop Asian hate. Okay, there's a problem with the Asian hate. Let's draft a bill, sign it, and it's done. Anything that needs to be done is done. With us, it's a carrot they dangle in front of us that they don't really want to do. And it's not going to help. We need education. Oh, it's not going to help. No, it's not. We need education. Getting a check from the government is not going to do that. And we need proper education.
So I want to touch on a couple points that he's made already before we see her rebuttal. One of the things that I do agree with what he's saying is that if reparations were going to happen, I believe that they would have happened. See, when you look at Native Americans and how they got some of their land back and their certain benefits that they get for being a Native American and holding cards back, that's an example of the U.S. government saying, we want to do something, so we're going to do it. It's been since 1865 and black people have not received reparations or any meaningful kind of care package, if you will, specifically for black people acknowledging slavery. And so at this point, I do think he makes an interesting argument that even if we are owed it and even if it is deserved, it's not going to happen. So let's spend our time focusing on something that will happen.
Education. A lot of us go to these institutions where we're not really prepared, we're not really focused, and we don't get things that'll help us in the real world. So if you want to help black people, a check from the government, from our tax dollars is going to get raised, because let's be clear, everybody in here is black. We all American. We all got to pay taxes. It'll go to that. So I don't really see how this is going to help us at all.
Okay. Well, first I'll start with it will help on even just a moral level. The reality is that the United States has become very comfortable with the fact that it does not consider black people equal, and it shows that in many ways that I'm sure we will discuss over the course of today. But ultimately, there has not been a committed, concerted effort to shifting the mindset around the use of black people as a labor force in this nation back when it was slavery, now in the use of slavery as slave labor in prisons.
I do agree with that. A lot of the prison population is black, and, we can get into why that is, but I do agree with the fact that when you just look at the mindset around black people being used as labor during slavery, and how some of the laws like the 13th Amendment would allow for slave labor essentially if someone was imprisoned, I do think you can see a correlation. If you've never seen the movie 25 to Life with Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy, check it out, because I think this is a prime example of this. We don't know how many people in prison should not be there, but even the ones that are there, exploiting them for 2 cents a day and stuff like that, I think is wrong. And I do think it creates an incentive to put people in prison so that then you can reap the benefits. These large corporations can get essentially free labor. These prisons that are for profit can get free labor and things like that. And I do think that there is a financial incentive that has to be explored. So I do think she has a point there.
So on a basic cultural level, reparations are an act of repair. They are an effort to say, our bad, we see you now. We have seen that done with Japanese folks who were put in internment camps. We have seen that done with Jewish folks. We have seen that done even in the case of slave owners who received reparations. When it comes to the use of tax dollars to pay reparations, and this is going to come up a lot today, it's a matter of values, right? For me, my value system circulates around the fact that I think that as a community, we should all be engaged in repair for our community. So I don't think there should be any problem with there being tax dollars spent at repairing consistent efforts that have been made to impede Black people. So the reparations you're talking about are not just related to slavery. There's reparations that have been discussed all over this nation in different communities as it relates to particular massacres, as it relates to redlining and the impediment of Black people to earn wealth by having property. There's been impediments in various ways that can be repaired. And I want to also just add, there's reparations that are considered a cash payment from a government. There's also the version of reparations that shows up in how funds are applicated to specific groups of people. So there's multiple ways in which what you're stating cannot happen could very well happen.
I will say that she's articulating this much better than people I've seen online articulate it. Me personally, one of the reasons why I don't focus as much on reparations, even though I am somebody who believes that there is something that is owed, I don't know what, and I don't know how much, and I don't know how it should be divvied out and stuff like that. It's not something that I would ever truly fight for and focus on, just because I think that there's opportunities other places, and I think the opportunity cost just isn't really there. And I think there's enough opportunity for Black people to go and do for self and kind of build our own. So, but I do think that she's articulating very great points. And she hasn't really said anything that I disagree with at this point.
Imagine being able
far as the money going towards certain things is going to help us. Let's look at Baltimore public schools. They get, I think, the third most money per pupil in the US of A, like $15,000 per student, but yet the majority of the population that comes from that environment can't read. They're illiterate. So we're dumping money on the situation, yes, but yet we're not getting the results we should get from it. Money's not going to help the thing. We need to just focus on what we need to focus on. As far as Black people being labor force of this country, what else are we doing? We got 25% of us.
So he was going somewhere with that point, but he didn't really land it cleanly. He said, they're investing a lot of money in these students in Baltimore or whatever, and we're not seeing the results, essentially. We're not seeing the results. We need to focus on what we need to focus on, but he never lays out what we need to focus on. And this is one of the issues. We have to be specific about, okay, we shouldn't give more money to these kids. Well, why shouldn't we? What is the actual problem of why they can't read? Is it that we're investing more per student, but those students have to overcome other obstacles? Is it that, what does the home life look like? Like, give some specifics, bro. And I get that this is an argument and a debate in real time, so maybe you don't have all the facts in front of you.
Was on some kind of government assistance. 1 out of every 3 Black men will go to jail. We got to do something. We got to work with our hands, work with tools, do something, because we're not doing much of anything. And also, one more piece here. Reparations, again, always anchored in front of us, never going to happen. As long as you've been living, as long as I've been living, as long as everybody been living, they say we need it, and it never gets done. One more piece.
You just said one more piece, then you're adding another one.
I promise.
So hold on to it.
One
on
piece.
to it.
I'm gonna land the plane. I'm gonna land the plane. I promise. Reparations is a thing. Like I said, it's a carrot to dangle in front of us. They're never really going to get it done. And if it was going to get done, it would have already been done. It's just something that they're using to try and make us stay Democrat. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, Democrats are not doing reparations either.
They're not.
This is nonpartisan. This is Black partisan, baby. Okay.
Well,
this is nonpartisan.
Who do we vote for? Who do we vote for? 93% of the time. There's no incentive.
To be quite honest, you're not talking to a Democrat. You're talking to a radical.
Okay, but let's
land this plane very quickly.
Who do we vote for?
Let's land this plane quickly.
Who do we vote for?
You're talking to a radical, not a Democrat.
Okay, and you are your own person.
Let me tell
you
something now. I don't know what they told you, but if they told you that cutting me off is how we're going to get clicks, stop it now.
Oh no,
that's not how we're going to. That's not how we're going to enter.
We having a debate.
A debate does not require continuously cutting somebody off.
Okay, no problem.
Now I do want to state this. You're stating things as it relates to how money is not fixing a problem without acknowledging the fact that the problem doesn't exist in a vacuum and that there are so many other factors that are determining how that money is getting spent to impede it from actually fixing a problem.
I'm gonna be real. she cooking. She cooking. I saw some other videos and maybe they were reacting to some other parts, but so far she's cooking. She has not been like we've seen other people online where they get very emotional and they get very triggered. She's been articulate. She's been calm. She's presented her side of it, I think, much better and concise than he has so far. Like, and I'm not even getting into the details of what they're saying particularly, but based on how she's just laid out her argument, this is more reasonable than I've seen a lot of people when talking about reparations speak about it. And she did hit the nail on the head when she said you cannot speak about these things in a vacuum. So just because more money was spent on these students and we didn't see higher reading levels doesn't mean that more money wouldn't help. We need to understand what else is going on. What is the context going around? That's what I said earlier. It doesn't exist within a vacuum. So if you gonna land the plane, brother, you gotta land it. Because it seemed like she came ready.
You can put all the money into Baltimore public schools you want, but if you are also putting all this money into policing, into communities that are not getting resources, then you are also creating your own conundrum. The other part of this is that when you're saying they, the they is a broad context. And the last part of this that I will say is that you keep saying they're dangling this in our face, they're dangling in our face. Slavery lasted for 400 years. It hasn't even been 400 years since slavery. So should we be only fighting for a quarter of the time to get repair?
All right, I'm so sorry. You've been voted out by the majority.
All right.
Please return to your seat.
Okay.
Just one.
All right, we got someone else up here now.
Hello,
I
Matt.
appreciate-
Matt
sure.
Nuclear?
Matt Nuclear, yes.
Matt Nuclear, give me a better handshake than that. Let's
Thank
do
you.
it.
I
All right.
appreciate having this conversation with a beautiful black woman like yourself. This is nice, beautiful arena here. I disagree that reparations are necessary. I think the most important thing that's necessary right now for the black community would be the stopping of violence, especially black on black violence. I don't see how reparations is going to solve anything. You can give everyone here like a $50,000 check, especially people that are in the streets who are committing violent crimes consistently. A $50,000 check, it's not going to fix anything. It's not going to increase the median household income in the next 10 years by 10% or 20%. For example, we have the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. We prevented Chinese people from getting citizenship and even entering the country. We discriminated against them and basically put them under apartheid, even here in the United States. Yet they have the highest median household income. How is that possible? How come they don't complain and feel entitled consistently to beg for reparations and beg for this when they are killing each other 90% of the time, which is the rate that black people kill each other, according to the FBI.
Oh, young Matt.
Yet white people are the oppressors.
I'm not sure where your education came from, but they lied to you.
Stats don't lie, though.
Statistics lie all the time. So let's start there. Particularly.
That is true. You can definitely manipulate statistics. And if you only use one statistic or you use statistics within a vacuum, it can create a different story. And this is coming from somebody that does market research and that's been at a high level doing market research. There are certain data points that you can leave out that changes the whole equation. There are certain data points that you can leave in, and then you can word the story in a way that the average reader wouldn't even notice or pick up on to try to be kind of ethical and stuff. So that is true. Statistics can lie, especially if you don't have the context behind those statistics. I want to point to something that he was saying about kind of Chinese people and comparing their struggle to black people. I don't believe that they were enslaved in this country in the same way that black people were. It's going to be a different journey. And on top of that, there's a lot of Chinese people that are selected from China to come over here. And then when they get here, they are a kind of hyper-focused group because they were selected from China because they have certain attributes and skills. So the people coming in from China, they're only kind of like the quote-unquote best of China. They're coming in and they're able to get these jobs and get an education and stuff like that. And a lot of times they do go back to China, but they're very selective on who they want to come over here. And so when that happens, of course, you're going to see a different dynamic because you're getting people that already were kind of successful and succeeding over here, had potential, and bringing them over here and plopping them in when they have not had to grow up under certain conditions that maybe black people would have had to grow up with in the United States. That's why you don't see these Chinese people moving to the hood. You don't see these well-off white people or anyone moving to the hood and having their children go through the same education system that a lot of black kids go through, or have them growing up in the same environment that a lot of black kids are going through, because everyone acknowledges that environment is not optimal for success. And so I think we have to take that into consideration as well.
Particularly when the statistics are coming from the sources that gain from the statistics being shown a different way. So if you're gonna start your argument on stats don't lie, you've already lost the argument. They lie all the time. One, comparing Chinese people who are immigrants that made a choice to come to the United States and comparing the continued effort of black people to ground themselves in a nation that continues to make impediments for them to show and live and exist in their true citizenship is a false equivalency.
I don't believe that happens at all. No one here is in.
Are you acting right now? Do you really believe
I'm telling
this?
the truth. There's no systemic racism that I've experienced here in America. What system is racist? I think the only racism we've actually seen recently, systemic racism that we've seen, is the application of systemic racism against white people. The University of Western Washington, for example, has been trying to segregate dormitories, using black-only dormitories because black people feel safer amongst each other. But they're more likely to kill each other than white people are ever to kill them. That's just the truth. You have King Von rapping about killing other black men. Why should I think that the white man is the oppressor when black men are more likely to kill me?
Oh my
Tell me.
God, this is scary. You need to think about me as your mama. Do not talk to me in that fashion. So let's check that now. Okay. So on a basic level, we have to understand that systemic racism is grounded in the realities that black people have not been considered an equal human being in this country since its onset. So there's simply no way to make the argument that there isn't systemic racism, and we have seen in very clear ways the system operate in an organically racist way. Do not cut me off. When we talk about systemic racism, we can start with even the fact that redlining, which was implemented to discriminate black communities. Are you shaking your head that redlining doesn't exist?
No, I'm saying I don't think it really existed at all. I mean, no, I don't think so at all.
So it does exist, and stating that it doesn't exist doesn't make it no longer exist. Redlining absolutely exists. It is not a...
Redlining absolutely existed. I don't know the prevalence of it right now. I think there's laws on the book that say you're not allowed to do that, but at a certain point, redlining did exist where they pretty much prevented black people from buying properties and stuff like that, owning properties, because they would not give them loans if they lived in a certain neighborhood or were coming from a certain neighborhood. There was a lot of pressure on the mortgage industry, I guess, to not have black people owning as much. They were considered more of a risk. What I do want to talk about is the idea that systemic racism does not exist. This is a tough one because I'm somebody that truly believes there's enough opportunity to go around for black people, that a lot of the wounds that we are experiencing are self-inflicted in 2025. When you look at the advent of AI, when you look at all the opportunities that are available now, and you see that the main conversation being had is that, you know, black people are just destined to fail, that we cannot go out and do for self, and that we need to vote for somebody or we need to wait for this. I don't think it's true, and I think that we are fumbling the biggest opportunity that has ever existed in humankind, right? Like, we are fumbling it. On the other side of it, I think systemic racism exists in the sense that we live in a Eurocentric society. Even though white people have experienced racism more recently, and even though there is this kind of, I want to say, public humiliation, public outrage, public push to almost demonize white people more, it's kind of cool for white people to even demonize white people. I still think they control a majority of the resources. I still think that they're a majority of the managers. I still think that they hold a majority of the power in the United States and globally, to be honest, if we're being real. And so from that perspective, I can see why, you know, when we look underneath the rug, we can kind of see some of these things that have not quite been fixed. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I'm gonna wrap this video up.
It is not something that's being made up. It's an empirical fact. And there are realities that exist because of redlining. We know that school systems are related to the way that property taxes are affecting the school systems. If a school system is not getting the same property value as the property taxes allow it, then it's not going to have the same efficacy at allowing for students to be able to get what they deserve. When we talk about systemic racism, we have to acknowledge that these private prisons are literally built based on the test scores of school students in 3rd grade. So if you are literally building prisons with the onset of, okay, if these people are not reaching a certain reading level, then we know that they're going to go down a prison industrial pipeline where we can use their free labor, then how is that not systemic? And if you want to
stop them from entering prisons.
How are you going to stop people from entering prisons if your goal is to get them into prison?
Sure, make them try to be more like Ben Carson than be like King Von. That's very, very simple.
So how does King Von happen? How does King Von happen?
King Von
reparations.
Hold on,
actually, let me land the plane.
Yeah.
We're talking about reparations, and what you're doing is actually just trying to get this conversation off the facts. And the fact is, reparations are just and necessary because on a basic level, Black people built this country, and the country continues to thrive off of the labor that Black people put into this country. And it would behoove you, young man, to really understand the way that your ancestors put blood, sweat, and tears into this nation that is still living off of those blood, sweat, and tears. And
let's break that down, because I think they said a lot of important things. Let's break it down from the perspective of what he was going into before she kind of redirected it. And I guess it was off direction to begin with. But he was talking about it's simple, create more people like Ben Carson versus King Von. Now, that sounds simple, right? That sounds simple. But understand, I think Ben Carson kind of grew up in the hood. I think he grew up in a very poverty-stricken environment and things like that. And one of the things that we can't deny, and I don't even think, people with money would deny this, is that when you have children growing up in that environment, the chances that they're going to make it out are much, much lower. And when I say make it out, I'm talking about not get a criminal record, not get caught up with crime and gangs and stuff like that, or be victimized, right? And this is the reason why you don't see people with money going and buying properties in the hood and raising their kids in the hood around other children, and their kids going to these schools that don't have a lot of funding. If it were really just like, okay, just raise a good person, raise a good kid, why do we see white flight? Why do we see a lot of prominent people that are white, Black, whatever? Why do we see them moving away from the inner city and trying to keep their children away from these environments? Because I think fundamentally we understand that no matter what we're doing at home, if that's not reinforced in the community, it's not impossible that our kids are going to, that aren't going to come out good. But it's very likely that if you put your child who comes from a good home and all that stuff, if you put them in an environment where there's gangs, drugs, easy access to sex, easy access to pretty much the underworld, if you will, education is not taken as seriously, they're not going to be as good as they could have been, but there's a good chance that they are going to succumb to that environment. And I challenge anyone to argue against me on that point, because we do not see people taking advantage of the lower property costs in the hood. We don't see people taking advantage of the lower commute times in the hood, because people with money don't want to go there. Yes, you have gentrification and people coming in and buying up these newer properties and stuff like that. And then the property values rise, and then, the people there, Black people, can't afford to stay, so they got to go. But they're doing that because they think that those communities are going to change, not stay the same. And so I do think it's important that we acknowledge that a King Von, because he was saying, how does a King Von happen? A King Von happens because a King Von grew up in an environment where nobody probably went to college, nobody did anything after high school. A lot of people probably didn't even go to high school or complete high school. You're surrounded constantly by emotionally uncontrolled men, and there's no fathers in the household. And these are all things that the child is exposed to and the child grows up in. So just saying create more people like Ben Carson, well, if over time we see that homes without fathers and homes where you're growing up in this environment produce a certain result, then we have to acknowledge that this type of environment typically produces this type of result. Yes, you can point to a Ben Carson, but if you were to say who's more likely to be a doctor, a child coming from the hood in a low income area, or a child that's growing up in a high income area where the parents have the money to send them to school, the parents have the resources to prep them the whole time growing up for school and keep them out of danger and keep them out of jail and keep them from doing the little things that will ultimately impede on them being able to accomplish their goals, you'd probably choose the kid that grew up more privileged. That's just real. But I think this is a great conversation. I think there's other videos that are within this same debate that I'm going to react to. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I know this was a little bit longer of a review, but I love doing these type of videos because we get to dive a little deeper. So if you finish this video, just hit the subscribe button. Appreciate y'all, and I'll see y'all in the next video.